So people ask, how is the test at OCS? And I would say easy. Um, for those of you that aren't in the Army, there's terminology that we use called check on learning. And all that means is like the highlights of a lesson. So after lesson one, there'll be a check on learning at the end. And after lesson two, three, four, five, you get the point. And so the test at OCS that you take, super easy. Just pay attention to the check on learnings, and almost 100% of the time, every single question that's on the check on learning is on the actual test itself. There's only one test, I think it was like the supply test, that threw everybody into a wrench, or however that expression goes. And that was because it wasn't directly from the check on learning. You actually had to like take the concepts that you learned and then apply it for different questions. So the supply test was actually challenging because you actually had to know the subject matter in order to answer the questions. But with the exception of supply test, everything else is literally, they just give it to you right there. And also too, Quizlet, you could go on Quizlet, type in OCS tests, and you will see every single test. And that's not a hidden secret. I don't know why people don't mention it more often on Reddit or other YouTube pages. I mean, as much as I want to be a lot more proud and be like, oh yeah, as an officer candidate, like I took a bunch of tests that required a lot of thought power. Like as much as I want to do that, that's not the case, So I'm not gonna try to sit here and make it seem like it was like the hardest thing in the world. It really wasn't, And I hope TRADOC hears this and realizes that OCS can and should be much harder than it is, and testing I feel like is one aspect that it could become much harder, because I mean, even our cadre sometimes would be like, yeah, I know you guys go on Quizlet and just study the day before, which you could honestly study the morning of and still pass the test. So it's easy. History, I will cover that in another video, but briefly, for me, I failed history the first time around. I completely underestimated it because I know how all the other tests were, in the Army. So I was like, okay, like if it's like any other Army test, yeah, I'll easily pass history. But it's not necessarily that history was hard. Is that the formatting of the actual test was a little bit different. And since this isn't about history tests, I'll cover that in another video, so you could look that up. But with the exception of history, every test super, super simple.